Why does process matter? We drown in messages. We wait for approvals. We get waited on for approvals. We sit through meetings that should have been an email. We grind through email chains that should have been a phone call, and find our work has invaded every corner of our life when all of this technology was supposed to make us more productive. I've been obsessed with system design for most of my career at this point, and it's starting to click as to why. The crux of it is technology lifts constraints, and we don't necessarily design which constraints it lifts, but we'll get back to that. First, I'd like to give a little background. I'm chief of staff to a young healthcare education company. It's just hit 10 years, big milestone. And I joined it when it was 2 years old. And I came in as a freelance copywriter and sort of digital marketing guy. And at the time, the founder was just doing it all from his phone, And so I built a process and some systems around that, email capturing funnels, and then email chains and things. But ultimately, the business model ended up not working as a B2C thing. We needed someone who understood the clinical world, who was a clinician and was a good salesperson, to sit down with organizations and business develop. And I was never a good salesperson. So ultimately, I didn't build what we needed there, but we brought someone in who could. So after that, COVID hit, and we pivoted a bit and started offering web conferencing services. And myself and someone else, a videographer on team, built out this whole system together. We do still do online events, and there's a process there now that's been developed further, because it's been quite a while now since I needed to shift my focus to HR, because as we were maturing, it became very obvious that a startup's approach to HR is no good. We were losing people. One person in particular I'm thinking of, actually someone that I was handing over events to, who left because there wasn't a clear progression process, and she couldn't see the what future there was with us, and so she left. And that I'd always been a little bit, I guess, cynical about HR. It's got a bit of a bad rap, from all kinds of different angles and reasons people don't like it. But like anything, I found digging into it and really understanding it at the root helped me to appreciate it tremendously. It's very important. And so anyway, at that point, I had learned enough about system design that I was a bit SOP obsessed. If you don't know, that's standard operating procedures. The idea that you can get, everything in a business this isn't the idea of an SOP, but an idea, I suppose, that I had, a hope and a dream, was that you could get ultimately everything in a business down into checklists, basically, and thereby make it a kind of self-running machine. And that doesn't work in practice over time, but certainly it was a step up. And we brought someone in who had experience in HR after about a year of me just kind of doing it. And he really took off really well and made that function run really well. And he specifically pushes back on, he might just be a bit like this, but he specifically pushes back on just direct praise towards him doing it, because he said, no, I came in here to find, the whole system laid out in front of me. That's why I could rock and roll from day one. And so that helped a lot, but also his experience helped a lot. Next up, governance. We have a board of directors. We have a senior management team, which is basically, primarily the earlier people who joined, who stuck with us, and reports and metrics and communication up and down the chain. All this kind of thing was another pretty dull topic, but again, looking into it, digging into it, I found the purpose of these things, and I found the purpose of reports, something that we so easily mock and don't like and degrade, but how crucial it is. But also, like anything, how it can get to where it's just a tick box exercise and not helpful either for the people writing it or the people reading it. Like anything, quality matters and consideration matters, and that's really the core of what we're getting to. But basically, we brought someone in to take that over, who is perhaps not fully taking it over, but basically the operations of that, the day-to-day of that system, is almost entirely off my plate. And this person was very green, right out of college, no experience in it, except for her own experience in running sort of university societies or what have you, but no formal experience in it. And she hit the ground running again. A little bit more of a learning curve, but ultimately that was, I think, another evolution. Now feels like the final boss fight of this whole journey. Now is the finance function with tremendous constraints in cash flow is an issue. We can't hire someone right now. We did try to hire somebody who was very credentialed at the start of the year, start of 2026. And no, it was at the start of 2026 when she left. But honestly, it was a little bit of a blessing because, not to talk anyone down, but it just, it didn't work at all. I think that we needed somebody who could think strategically, and basically that wasn't what we got. So basically this whole part of it, you can see a bit of stress is triggered because it is a final, what this is taking from me is a final synthesis of everything I've learned about system design to make this work within the severe constraints that I have, and that's breeding innovation. And I can see the evolution very clearly now and why each iteration of it was better than the last. And I'm hoping, as I say, this is the final boss fight where I really nail down how to take unmanageable workflows and contain them into a repeatable, a reliable process, and one that is very repeatable and reliable, but also allows for the nuance and the slight organic flavor that human beings bring to a system. It's not the system is totally dead without the people. But likewise, you can't design a person to fit the system, and you can't just be changing a system all the time to fit the person. But there is a way around this, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I want to explain in this video why any of this matters, and why this matters so much now as technology increases its reach and power, and why this is making us less productive, paradoxically. So I'm going to take a story from A World Without Email. Highly recommend to everybody. So but especially people who work in the knowledge sector in any way. All right, so I'm going to read a passage from page 96. What does technology want? Adrian Stone's first job after graduating from college in the early 1980s was at the IBM headquarters in Armonk, New York. At the time, internal communication at IBM relied heavily on scribbling notes. As Stone recalls in a 2014 essay he wrote about this period, if you wanted to talk to someone, you might try calling them, but because this often failed, the default approach was to walk to their cubicle and leave a note for them to read later. Once they read their little note, they got a chance to be it and play the game in reverse, Stone wrote. This could go on for days. This is an important reminder that the world before email was no pre-lapsarian paradise. Communicating in big organizations during this period was a real pain. And email, when it came on the scene, offered a simple solution. So it's no surprise that as IBM began to network its operations in the 1980s, it was quick to deploy an internal email service. So what we're talking about here is the very beginning of unconstrained, networked digital communication. All right, so one of Stone's first tasks at the company was to help these efforts by investigating how much IBM employees at the Armonk headquarters were currently communicating through voicemails, memos, scribbled notes, and so on. They assumed most of this communication would shift to email, and they wanted to provision a sufficiently large mainframe to handle the load. As Stone explained to me, these machines were expensive at the time. We're talking prices in the millions, so it was important to identify exactly how much processing power you really needed. Stone soon put together an estimate for a server that could easily handle all the analog communication already occurring in the office. The system was configured and deployed, and once activated, it was a hit among employees. Too much of a hit, as it turned out. Within a few days, they blew the server due to overload. As Stone told me, they experienced 5 to 6 times more traffic than he had estimated, meaning that almost immediately after email was introduced at IBM, the volume of internal communication exploded. A closer examination revealed that not only did people send many more messages than they did in the pre-email era, they also began CCing these messages to many more people. Pre-email, simple communication was largely person-to-person, Stone told me. After email, these same conversations now unfolded over long back-and-forth threads, including many different people. Thus, in a mere week or so, was gained and blown the potential productivity gain of email. He joked. All right. So this illustrates how it began. And it illustrates the problem, right? Not to go too much into the psychological weeds of it and get too drawn off the point, but context shifting is what's being hurt every time there's any interruption. And the problem with communication now versus pre the lifting of constraints is that we have to switch our contexts all the time, which is mentally exhausting and doesn't allow us to focus and get anything real done. Whereas before, when you literally had to just be there with somebody, you were there in a context, working on a thing, and the communication would have been all around that thing. Also, bring into it asynchronous versus synchronous. Like I said in the intro, yes, we complain about meetings that could have been an email, but also notice that I think much more commonly, email chains or Slack message groups, etc., should often be a phone call. But to bring it back and to explain where we are now, I recently watched something from Alex Hormozy. He did an informal little video where he explained AI being used, or how it's not being used, strangely enough, by huge proponents of it. Very, very serious business people are not using it themselves, but they may say, oh, of course, my team's using it, of course, but they're not using it themselves. And he pointed out that basically AI is very good at making more efficient the unimportant. And so something that he said that illustrated this perfectly is that if he realizes that an area of work is actually not important to the business and decides to stop it, he just tells those people, we're not working on this anymore. And all of a sudden, all of their time is made available for more important things. Whereas if you just introduce email to that situation without that kind of critical thinking and decision making, what would happen? Obviously, they would just make their unimportant work extremely efficient. Right? You're starting to see the problem. This, lifting of constraints. When technology simply lifts constraints, it does not lift it in one particular area. We have to decide and direct where it lifts constraints, where it makes things more efficient. It's just going to make, it just has, and for decades now, has made everything more efficient, including and especially the least important things. Because the least important things are the most easy things for us to focus on and, feel productive in improving, because we can usually get some quick gains there. But they're little gains, unimportant gains. They're gains in a direction which we don't necessarily want to go or need to go, or doesn't help our business. And so, so technology makes the unimportant efficient. And this is the huge problem. Most people aren't seeing it, but it's also a huge opportunity, of course. Anytime when this happens, when there's a problem that a lot of people don't see, if you do see it, it's a huge opportunity, because we can have the best of both worlds. We have all of this technology that does make things very efficient, but if you are not choosing what is being made more efficient, then you're just going to end up drowning in the unimportant. I've recently been reading this book, or listening to this book, I haven't got the physical copy yet, called Inside the Box, and it's about constraints and their benefit. And it might be one of the reasons, that and the pressure of the finance department, the finance function that I'm building out, it might be one of the reasons why these things are really synthesizing, because I'm realizing, or my understanding of system design is coming together, is because I see it everywhere now, right? So to take this book, Peak, about deliberate practice, about how the best become the best. And it is intense focus. Deliberate practice is having a coach, someone who knows what they're talking about, take you through the process of getting better, and every time with a lot of feedback, and with them designing what you should be focusing on next, which is your next weakness, the next thing to crush, to hyper focus on this one thing and fix it, and then move on to the next. It requires intense focus and constraints. And this one, the one thing, obviously a lot of constraint there. The one thing, there's a passage at the beginning I probably won't find unless it just falls on it, where he talks about how with people that he was coaching with within his business, he would start to despair at how they would get, again, high performing, serious people. He would coach them every week and say, what will you get done next week? And they would often get most of the things done, but not the most important thing. And he started to reduce that list. Okay, what's just the 3 things you can do? What's the 2 things you can do? Finally, out of desperation, he said, what's the 1 thing that you can do this week that would make everything else easier or unnecessary? And, his claim, as most business memoirs, results blew up. But this goes towards the point that we need constraints, but now we get to design our own. And this last one, profit first, is one which I need to implement in what I'm currently doing with the finance function of the business. And the key constraint here is that a little percentage of total revenue is put aside for profit into a profit account before it touches anything else, and it's not allowed to be used. And so that is creating more of a constraint on the active money in the operations bucket. And so his point being that entrepreneurs can make things work on like any budget, right? And so constrain the budget you have by putting the profit aside, and it not being the bottom line, but it being the top line in a way, or the first thing that you move and cordon off and constrain and constrict or restrict yourself from touching, then that profit is now safe. And you will just work within slightly tighter constraints, and you will make it work if you're an entrepreneur, if you're innovative. And so all these things just go to show that constraints are critical. Now, I don't want to make this too long, or it's probably too long already, or too tactical, but just to quickly go over a few examples in terms of gaining control back over your life if work has invaded every corner of it, and you want to constrain it into a system that you design and that you control. So one small example to hopefully help it to click would be a docket clearing meeting. A docket clearing meeting is where, with an individual, you have their docket, or maybe it's a team, and you meet every week to clear the docket. This cuts out an entire week of back and forth messages. Again, without any constraints. Now we don't have to find them and talk to them face to face. We can just shoot off a message, and that's bad. That is life without constraints and interruption and distraction and everything that we deal with. So a docket clearing meeting constrains you in a good way. Anything that you want to ask them that you would normally send them a message, or that they would normally get sent messages by others, goes on their docket. And every week you clear that docket. And if anything can't wait a week, then you have a phone call. You have a phone number that you can actually call them, or other people can call them. And typically, maybe you'll need to put around more constraints over that if this turns out not to be the case. But typically, that is enough friction for people to not do that. It turns out that this thing that they thought was really important actually can wait a week, given that they have the slight friction, the slight constraint of it now being a bit socially awkward to call somebody. It's incredible how that works. Another one would be office hours. So a similar thing, but people come to you perhaps just within your office hours, and the rest of the time there is no contacting you. So it can be, again, whatever you decide, whatever you design, whether it's every morning, or whether it's just a few times a week, or once a week, a few hours, where people can, like a professor at a university, have a kind of open door policy during just that time, just that restricted time. And the rest of the time, they cannot assume that you're reachable at all. And you won't get any messages throughout all that time. You can focus on what actually matters. And another quick one would be authority threshold. Another one which I hope to make quick would be authority thresholds, where if you're trying to delegate something to somebody else and you find they're very resistant to it and they keep coming back to you and asking for your approval, try putting a constraint around the authority that you're delegating to them. So saying, okay, putting in writing, I hereby give X the right to make a decision that costs up to X amount of revenue or expenses up to this amount, and that's perfectly fine. Anything more than that, then there's an escalation process where it goes to you. So all of a sudden, all this stuff that you were being waited on, that people were waiting for you to approve of, that you think is kind of inane and not worth your time because it isn't. Now all of a sudden, that clears up because someone else is doing it, and they're doing it in a way where they are comfortable and you are comfortable because both they and you are pretty sure that they're not going to make some terrible decision. They're not going to get in trouble from their perspective, and you are not afraid that they're going to make some big problem, some decision that will cause a big problem, because you've set constraints around the authority that you've delegated. Okay, so really, I just wanted those to be a quick taste to give you a flavor of what I'm talking about and why this matters. These little hacks are great, but there's something deeper that I want to get to in this channel. And if something's clicked for you here, if you understand your current overload and your kind of creeping workload better now, and maybe you have some idea about what to investigate and what to test to fix this, then please tell me in the comments below. And subscribe, but more importantly, go to Substack if you want to connect. James of the Bear. I'm under a pseudonym to protect the innocent. And yeah, I really hope to hear from you. And if this clicked for you, if this made sense, and if this helped you, please tell me. Thank you very much. Bye.